So, hi, my name is Jim. Let's wait a couple minutes, and while we wait, I'd love to know. This title was the title of this talk was originally "Cucumbers Everywhere," and so I would love to know where you're from and what the word for cucumber is in your native tongue, in your native language. If you could put it in the chat there, that would be a lot of fun. It'd be great. So, all right. 4 people, good. 3. Okay, yeah, so, okay, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jim Bethancourt, and I lead the Houston Java Users Group, and I am really excited to be here today. Thank you so much. I hope that those of you who are in attendance, that you enjoy this presentation. I certainly enjoy giving it. And I guess as far as how can this, what I'd like to convey to you, I guess, before we really get started, is that the interesting thing is that in your career, I guess you'll come across a lot of things. You'll come across a lot of opportunities, and you'll want to know how you can grow in your career. The biggest way you can grow, the best way, and the most enjoyable way that you can grow in your career is to give talks, to give presentations, to put yourself out there. It takes some courage, but I'll tell you a little secret. I just started learning about Cucumber maybe 5-6 months ago, if even that much, and that's it. So what I did, I just learned as much as I could about it, and gave a present, and then I spoke up and said, "Hey, you should give a presentation about that." So they said, "Hey," I said, "Okay, great. You know, that sounds good." So I learned even more. I read as many books as I could find that were relevant, and I put together this slide deck and I presented it, and people loved it. So that's really about all it takes. And so again, it's really important. The most helpful thing is if you're interested in it, and people will find that they'll resonate with your interest, and they'll get interested too. They'll almost get excited for you. So again, speaking, it takes a little bit of courage, and you don't have to give a long talk. A lot of times, if you can find a place to give a talk for maybe 5-7 minutes, something that you're interested in, it would be really good to just kind of get practice, to get familiar with standing up in front of a crowd, to get familiar with what it feels like to give a talk. And if you can ask, "Hey, look, yeah, if we could not record that, I'd really appreciate that," because don't feel you have to be recorded. Don't feel like it has to go on YouTube or Vimeo or whatever the website is. It just come from the heart. Be you, be authentic, and enjoy it. That's the most important thing. If you enjoy it, if you're not enjoying it, then maybe try something else. If you find something that's just doesn't feel like it's you, try something else. But again, get out there, share what you know. Bruno talks a lot about that. So it's definitely again a great way, a fun way to grow your career, to meet a lot of great people, and then get involved in your Java user group or your whatever the user group is. If you're not a Java developer, get involved in user groups, meet great people, network. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. My name is Jim Bethancourt, and so I've been developing software for a little bit over 15 years, and I lead the Houston Java Users Group at www.hjug.org. I do have to warn you, the website is in slight disrepair, but we are currently in the process of revamping it. We just had a Jug meeting this past month, and we came up with a list of great things that we want to do, and so now we need to start getting to work on it. I'm also a principal consultant at Improving. Our website is improving.com, and we offer consulting services for Java, for .NET, and I think for Go as well. I'm not sure. And then also we are the leading provider of Scrum training in the US, if I recall correctly. And see, we have several coming up. Professional Scrum Master certification, and we can also see if we can get you a discount. If you're interested, you can email me at jim.bethancourt@improving.com, and we can see what we can figure out. And it's a great company to work for. I've known the folks for a really long time, although I've only been working there for a couple of weeks. It's just phenomenal. They really put a lot of value into the people that they work with, and they want to get to know you as a person, not just what you can do for them. And it's just phenomenal. Goodness, what else? It's just a fun place to work. It's been voted one of the best places to work in the state of Texas. They have all sorts of fun family events. They really care about the employees. And we also have lunch and learns. I'll get to those in just a second. But first of all, if you want to follow me, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, and I am on GitHub. I'm currently working on a software tool that'll be a Maven plugin and a Gradle plugin. And there are other repos that I put out. One that I'll talk about today as part of this talk. And then also at Improving, we have lunch and learns that are going on right now. The upcoming talks are, you can find them at improving.com/virtual-events. And if you want to look at our past talks, they're on YouTube at youtube.com/user/improving-enterprises/videos. And I gave this talk on this past Wednesday, and it's already been posted on YouTube, so you can certainly find it there. I wanted this to also be an interactive talk. So at the beginning, if you hadn't joined just yet, this talk was originally called Cucumbers Everywhere. And so I would love to know what the word is for cucumber in your native language and where you're from. And so just again, to make it fun, to make it interactive. And if you do have any questions as we go along, please do put them in the chat. I also mentioned that I only started learning about cucumber maybe 5-6 months ago, and I'm just eager to share what I've learned. And it's a lot of fun, and certainly makes developing software much more real, much more authentic. So I guess let me get a swig of water here, and then we'll dive into the presentation. All right. So I'd first like to start out with a bold statement about Cucumber. Interestingly enough, Cucumber is not a testing tool. Believe it or not, it's actually a collaboration tool that, when used properly, actually creates living documentation that also is also an executable specification. So if somebody says, "Oh yeah, I got to go write a Cucumber test for that," well, yeah, you're only sort of partly using it. It can be so much more. So let's go ahead and break it down. So in the chat, let's hear it. So what is the goal of a sprint? Anybody? What's the goal of a sprint? Let's have some guesses in the chat. I'd love to see what you have. Anybody? Okay, come on. I know you're there. I see ya. Come on. Okay. So if you follow Scrum, okay, yes, a usable piece of code. I like it, Armando. That's good. Some people might call that a potentially shippable product increment. So if you've heard of that before, if you haven't heard of it before, it's a term in Scrum, and it's if the customer wants to, they can say, okay, you know what? I want to ship that today, and I'm happy with it. Let's do it. Let's get this value delivered. So if we break it down, then let's ask, okay, what comprises a potentially shippable product increment? Any guesses? Anybody? What makes up a potentially shippable product increment? This is a little bit trickier because it's not in the Scrum. It's not like a Scrum. Okay, yeah. All right, address the business use case. Yeah, that's good. That's a good one. Thank you, Ram. So yes, I was thinking along. How about a minimally marketable feature, or maybe one or more minimally marketable features, kind of like a minimum viable product, basically. So now the next question is, how does a team decide what's in a minimally marketable feature? Any guesses on this one? What's in a minimally marketable feature? Team velocity? Okay, maybe. All right, good, yeah, possibly. But how do you decide what goes into that minimally marketable feature? Not what you can accomplish, but what goes into that feature. What should that feature be? What should it look like? Okay, priority, good. All right, I like it. Yeah. So okay, yeah, meets the minimum requirement. Okay, good. All right. So I'd like to suggest a meeting, actually, a meeting of how you decide. You have what's called a 3 Amigos meeting. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Spanish, amigo is friend, and so you have a yep. So identify user stories. So MOSOW, I'm not familiar with MOSO or how you might say that, but that's good. Minimum statement of work, maybe. So I'm thinking 3 Amigos meeting. So the 3 Amigos meetings consist of a business analyst, a developer, and a tester, which actually sounds like the beginning of a joke. A business analyst, a developer, and a tester meet, and then they decide something. So a must, a should, and a could, and a won't. Okay, interesting. So yeah, that could be the discussion that you have as part of a 3 Amigos meeting. So they collaborate. The 3 Amigos, they collaborate and they share their unique perspectives as they discuss what should and shouldn't be part of that feature. Again, the must, the should, the could, and the won't. Thank you. That's awesome, Sophie. And so the goal of delivering that minimally marketable features is to validate the assumptions of as soon as possible, so that they can talk to the user and in case they turn out to be false, and they realize, hey, look, we've done something wrong. We need to change direction. And so you're going to have these 3 Amigos meetings, maybe even 2-3 times a day. Yes, exactly. It brings the customer value. You're bringing the customer value. Thank you, Leonardo. And so when you're coming up with these minimally marketable features, ask, what is the value? What is the impact? Again, what is the must, the should, the could, and the won't for the MVP? So what is it that makes this a big deal? What makes this big? And maybe do we need to slice this feature up somehow? Or do we need to ask the user, hey, can we slice this up? Is there too much of something? Is there too many of something? Maybe as part of the feature, what takes a long time? Even if it's well understood, what can we maybe make shorter to improve the productivity of the user? What are the risks that are involved in trying to write this feature? And also, what risks are we trying to address in this feature? So what irreversible negative consequences could happen in this feature? So write these statements as statements of risk that are being realized. So for example, we're not able to optimize the performance enough for these reports to run overnight. So that's the current problem that they're trying to face. Don't just write performance as the risk that's trying to be addressed, but specifically, we can't optimize the performance well enough to currently. So maybe you need to take a step back and reformulate what exactly what the value is that needs to be delivered, or in this. So, and also certainly address the uncertainties as part of this feature. So what important questions do you need to answer in order for this feature to succeed and to make the customer's life easier? So let's go ahead and get started. So whenever you're starting out with Cucumber or with any kind of behavior-driven development effort, you want to start out with the less critical features, and you want to start with Happy Paths, because this will take off some of the pressure of getting things exactly right. Because it can be super embarrassing whenever you say, "Oh yes, I have the answer," and then you fall flat on your face. So instead, maybe try something a little bit small. Take it experimentally and do and take small steps. But and again, get some collaborators with you so you don't feel like you're doing it all alone. And again, coming up with Happy Paths will help things to get started quickly. So one other thing I would certainly recommend is using personas and concrete examples. So if you're not familiar with personas, personas are taking and building up sort of a profile of your user of that feature, and you understand them, you interview them, you get to know them, and you capture all this, and you can see, okay, how do they use the product? What do they want to use it for? What are their goals? And then you go and you write all this up with a picture and the description of what they are, who do they do, what's sort of a day in the life of their job, and you tape it on the wall. And you whenever you're working in your future, you can look at that picture, you can read that, you can it gives you a visual representation. It gives you a reminder of who your user is, who you're actually working for, and who you're helping to make their life better. And by using concrete examples in your feature files, it'll help the team to make sure that they understand what the user is trying to accomplish. This is so critical. So when concrete examples and personas are used, it allows everyone involved to understand the struggles of their users, to have empathy and compassion for the users. And it helps everyone to stay grounded in that reality of your users. So another really important thing as you write features is to use specific, ubiquitous language that is the language of the business, that will allow any user who reads that file, the feature file, to understand what the feature is trying to accomplish. So avoid technical language and avoid jargon that is overly complex, or say a lot of acronyms. And so what you want to do is, again, you say think of it as if you're a brand new developer on the project, or a brand new business analyst, or a brand new tester. You should be able to take and open up the code base and grab the feature files and look through them and understand, have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen whenever the user of what the feature is trying to accomplish as part of the application. And so again, avoiding technical language makes it much more approachable, and avoiding overuse of jargon makes it much more approachable, so that anybody can read this. Because again, what we're aiming for living documentation that just so happens to also test the code that we're writing. So we end up again with a living document that will also continue to grow and tell us when something's gone wrong. And so the need for test scripts really and requirements documents will be significantly reduced. And the other really great thing is that we have the application documentation living inside the code base. And so it's not off squirreled away in some obscure location that nobody can find. It's right there in the code base, and it also stays up to date, because the tests will start failing. Test cases will start failing if it's not. So there's actually it was almost like a bad joke. One job that I had, people would ask, hey, so where are the user requirements? Oh, they're over there, and they're from 2009, and nobody's really kept them up to date. It's like, okay, so they're worthless, right? Yeah, they're worthless. So, but oh well, such is life. So But thankfully, we have a much better answer with behavior-driven development, with Gherkin, with Cucumber, and with JBehave, things along those lines. So, all right. So again, avoid technical language, and it results in living documentation. So at this point, I've talked about feature files a lot already. So you're probably wondering, well, what is a feature file? Has anybody, would anybody like to venture a guess as to what a feature file is in the chat? So it describes how many features? 1, 2, 3, 4. How many do you think? All the features in the system? No. So, all right. So a feature file describes as an executable specification, as I've talked about, that's written in plain English. Cucumber engine amazingly can understand over 40 written languages. That was one of the reasons why I wanted to have a little bit of fun and ask what the name of Cucumber was in your own native language, in your mother tongue. And so again, Cucumber can understand 40 written languages. And using keywords, the Cucumber engine can execute code that matches these phrases that are in the feature file. Gherkin is a language that's used or that has these keywords in it, and it's what's called a pidgin language, P-I-D-G-I-N. It's sort of an interface language, basically, so that it understands. The engine can understand just enough of what you want to do, so that you can actually translate your English phrases into code, which is really quite nice. So at the top of the feature file is the keyword feature, and a name and a description of the scenarios that are about to follow. So in this, this feature file, I'm actually following the cucumber.io 10-minute tutorial, and you can follow it yourself. I've added a few small things as well to illustrate some additional key concepts. But again, you can find this on cucumber.io, and it's a very quick, very fun tutorial. So again, a feature keyword file always starts with the feature keyword, a description, a name of the feature. Is it Friday yet? In this case, and a description about the scenarios that are about to follow. So the feature keyword has to be followed by either the scenario keyword, the background keyword, or the scenario outline keyword. In this case, it's the scenario keyword, and I'll get to scenario outline and background later. So a scenario is a single concrete example of how the system should behave in a particular situation, and is composed of statements called steps. So so each of these steps will actually be an executable phrase. So in this case, we have the given keyword here, which is used to set up the context of when or where the scenario happens. And then we have the when keyword, and this is the action that takes place that interacts with the system somehow. And then the then will actually check the outcome of that interaction to see if what happened was what is expected. And so you want to make sure that, again, that these are readable and that they're not technical. And each scenario should make sense and be able to be executed independently of any other scenario, because that's exactly what Cucumber is going to do. It'll execute each scenario independently. It should also contribute meaningful business value. So, for example, let me ask this question to the audience. So, what needs to be tested but doesn't contribute business value and shouldn't have a feature file with scenarios? Any guesses? All right, so I'd love to hear your responses, but the one that comes to mind for me is a login screen, because, well, it should just work, right? You should just be able to log in, but in and of itself, the login screen doesn't provide any business value. you could say maybe sometimes user interface widgets in and of themselves don't provide any business value, though they contribute to the business value. So again, if it's a highly technical component, it shouldn't necessarily have a scenario that's tied to it. But if it captures a scenario of how the feature is used, then it should have its own scenario statement and scenario so that it can illustrate how that feature is being used and contributes business value. So it's also really important to keep implementation details like clicking on buttons and selecting drop downs out of scenario steps. All too often, people will fall into the trap of saying, okay, open up the page, given I have a web page, this web page, right? Given I am on this screen, and then I select such and so user, and then I select this attribute about this user, and then I click OK. When I click OK, then the user should have these attributes. Well, that's more like a unit test. That's more like a test script, and that's not what we want. It's not illustrating business value. What we really want to derive here is business value and a living documentation that just so happens to be an executable specification. And so, again, focus on the business language and implementation details, such as clicking on the buttons, selecting the user, selecting the values, whatever the case may be, should belong in the step definition code itself, which we'll get to. I'll show you a demo in just a minute. And so again, it's also important to avoid excess detail and do your best to use declarative rather than instructional language. And I got this question today actually. So was how many steps should be in a scenario? And there is no one right answer, or how many is too many, rather was the question. There is no right answer, but the rule that comes to mind is, I can never remember if it's 5 plus or minus 2 or 7 plus or minus 2, but basically it should be easy for the user to keep everything in their head whenever they're reading the scenario. You don't want to make it too long and too complex, because it will make it difficult for somebody who's reading the scenario to follow what you're trying to illustrate. So there are 5 different step return values when a step is executed. And so the first one is undefined. So when Cucumber can't find a step definition that matches this step, it marks the step as undefined and it'll stop the scenario. The next one is pending. So when Cucumber finds a step definition that's halfway through being implemented, it'll mark the step as pending and stops the scenario. So you tell Cucumber that a step is pending by throwing a pending exception. And then the next one is skipped. So if a step is skipped when another step that executes before the skipped one is pending or undefined. Then failed, of course, is when the block of code that's executed by a step definition raises an exception, and Cucumber will mark that step as failed and stop the scenario. The rest of the steps in the scenario will be skipped. And then last but certainly not least, passed. Hey, it worked. So let's go ahead and get started. So first, I'd like to point out that Cucumber supports quite a number of languages. As you can see here, there are about there are well over 20 that are supported, with a number being officially supported by the Cucumber team. And then the ones that you see here that are in green lozenges and have the word official in there. And then you have in the blue, you have the ones that are semi-official that use components from Cucumber, but they are not they're not actually maintained by the Cucumber team. You have unofficial, which are hosted elsewhere and don't use any components from Cucumber. And then unmaintained implementations are official, but unmaintained, and they need new maintainers. Primarily because the Cucumber team found that these implementations aren't really being used by a lot of people. So it's time for a demo now. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up some code. I'm using Java and Spring Boot in this demo. However, you don't need to use a DI container, dependency injection container, when you use Cucumber. And when you use Cucumber without one of the dependency injection containers, it will manage the creation of all of your hooks for you, and it'll manage the step definitions itself for you. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that Cucumber will create fresh instances of each step definition or hook class for each scenario. And that means that these classes need to have a default constructor. Otherwise, Cucumber won't know how to create them. And it makes it hard to share state safely between several step definition classes. So if static methods are used to share state across scenarios, it can lead to problematic tests that fail intermittently. So, all right, let's go ahead and pull up the code. So, all right, can y'all see my code okay? Yeah, is that legible? Can you see it? Can I get a quick yes, I can see the code, or just, hey, yep, I can see it? Or let me know if I need to make, okay, cool, thanks, Leonardo. All right, so I'll start out here. So I'll walk you through this code base. It's all 5 different files. So we have Spring Boot, we have the Cucumber Java version, Cucumber JUnit, Cucumber Spring, and then the declaration of JUnit. Here in this case, I'm using JUnit 4, but there is support for JUnit 5. I would, sure, yeah, Ram, let me see if I can do that real quick. I can, let me see here, hold on, okay. Okay, apply. Okay, how's that? Is that better? Okay, so, oh no. Okay, cool. Okay, there we go. Great. Okay, excellent. So we have Cucumber Java, Cucumber Spring, JUnit, and then Spring Test, which will actually help us run these tests. So, all right. So here we have our simple application. So this is a Spring Boot app, and it's going to call Is It Friday class, and here we have the actual service, which tells us if today is Friday or not. And so if the string that we passed in is equals Friday, it'll say TGIF, which is short for thank goodness, or nope if it's not. So then we have our Cucumber test runner, which doesn't have a whole lot here, but it will actually look for our Cucumber tests for us, and it will execute them through the Maven command through Maven for us. And then we have our feature file. So this is where I define all the features. So let me start out just by keeping it simple, and I'm going to have just this one right here. Okay, so I can go ahead and run this test right here. Let me go ahead and clean it and run it, and then we can see. All right, so let's run this, and we can have see here and how it'll map this building. Okay. So it maps. So actually, let me take a step back and let me show you the step definition class. So here we have the step definitions that map to these phrases. So here you see today is Thursday is in this @given, and so we have the given is today is Thursday. The when is I asked whether it's Friday. Then I should be told whatever it is I'm looking for. So again, today is Thursday or today is Friday, and then also so when I ask whether it is Friday yet, I can check then if today is Friday, it'll set what I'm going to be looking for. And then in the then, I'm saying I should be told string. So here I'm passing in, you can see it up here today, up here too, I should be told blank. So this is the expectation. So see if you look here, you see it's blue here. IntelliJ is smart enough to recognize, okay, you're passing in some kind of a variable. And so this value will be passed in to the method, and then you can perform and some kind of an assertion with JUnit, or maybe test in G if you use test in G. And this is where and then it'll fail if it doesn't pass, if the expectation isn't what's matched. So one really nice thing about Cucumber is that I'm going to go ahead and do something. I'm going to go ahead and comment this entire step definition file out. And then I'm going to go ahead and run these scenarios. And so what it will do, will actually tell me what I need to write. And so if you scroll down a little bit, you can see it'll give me the Cucumber Spring. It'll give me the Cucumber Spring configuration class that that I was looking for. So it'll tell me here, run Cucumber test. You see the same thing here, Spring Boot test. Is that right? No, I'm sorry. This is wrong. This is for the step definitions class. So I can go ahead and take and specify Spring Boot test, and then Cucumber context configuration, and it will take care of that for me. And then it will tell me what to write. So in this case, given today is Thursday, I want to, then I can just take and copy paste this code right here into the step definition file, and it will and I can copy paste this. So instead of being undefined, now the step will be pending, and I will get that pending exception instead of an undefined exception. And again, pending means, well, I've got this step, it's sort of halfway done, but not quite yet. And so you can leave that in there to let folks know, hey, this isn't done yet, instead of leaving it completely undefined. Thankfully, Cucumber step definitions are much easier to write now than they used to be. Previously, you had to use regular expressions, but they made that a lot easier now that you can just specify in brackets what the variable type is, such as strings, ints, doubles, longs, things like primitive types typically. However, there is a mechanism where you can create transformations that are complex. So if you pass in a specific something, then you can write the transformation and it will create a fully fledged object for you. And then same thing with tables. You can pass in tables as well that have all the data that you need for a particular type of object. It can get kind of ugly, but it's certainly a facility that's available if you need it. So let me go ahead and uncomment this. But again, I just want to make sure that you knew that that Cucumber makes it easy to get started, and it's not as difficult now that you don't have to use regular expressions. So okay, so that, and also besides just running each individual scenario, you can run the features as well. And so if you can run the entire, this will run all the scenarios in a single feature. Okay, let me switch back over the presentation. So all right, so now you're probably wondering, well, how do I? The best approach I've seen is one feature file per domain entity. And so you want to do this because you want to have all of your ideas around a single feature in a single feature file. And then also along the same lines, you want to have one step definition file per domain entity. So again, this is more of a step definition class per domain entity rather than step definition file. But also definitely keep in mind that step definitions are global. And so what will happen, and there in the books that I read, there's great examples of this where you use a when step in one feature file that ends up being a given step in another feature file. And this is not what you want. And this means that your language that you've used to define that step is not specific enough. And so again, what you want to do is to try to be as specific as possible about that scenario, about that step in that scenario, whenever you write that and whenever you come up with the business description of what is actually happening. So you probably another question in your mind, and again, if you have questions, certainly definitely please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on it. Another question you probably have is, how do I scale? How do I scale my features? One way to do that is to have what's called a background section. So in the Is It Friday Yet feature, we can add what's called a background section, and this allows you to so one feature, many files. Is it okay? what you want to do is you want to try and have as many as much of the feature in a single file as possible, but you can have as many scenarios as you want in a single feature file. I wouldn't go, over 30 might be a bit overboard because typically you want to have, but again, this feature file should describe a single feature that the application is trying to perform. Yes, so initialize text features. Great question, Sophie. So let me get to that in just a minute when we dive back into the code. So a background feature, again, allows you to specify a set of steps that are common to every scenario in the file. So instead of having to repeat those steps over and over and over again in each of the scenarios, you move them up to the top into the background element, and they basically fade into the background. One thing that one idea that has been suggested is to use what are called background personas or feature personas. And so you have a feature and you initialize everything about that feature for that persona into that as part of that background step, or part of that step that you include in particular scenarios for that feature file. And so I also one big benefit, there are a couple big benefits to using background steps. So one is that if you ever need to change the background steps, your background givens, you only need to change them in one place. Then the importance of these steps fades into the background so that when you're reading each individual scenario, you can focus on what's unique and important about each scenario. So again, in this case, I have a background of when I have a bowl for ice cream, because I don't know about you, but I like to have ice cream on Friday. So I'm really excited about getting to have chocolate ice cream for tonight after dinner. So all right. So for this scenario, the background step will run. And so given Thursday isn't Friday, scenario Thursday isn't Friday. So today is Friday. When I ask whether it's Friday yet, I should be told nope. But I should not have ice cream in my bowl. So you'll notice I use the word but here, and it's in bold because but is also a keyword in cucumber, just like given, when, or then. And interestingly, I mentioned earlier that you can swap out that a then step might be mistakenly used in a given step. And so the crazy thing is that it doesn't matter what you put in front. It doesn't matter a whole lot about what you put in front of each step. You can start with then instead of given, and given as the second step, and but as the last step. But of course, it won't read right. It'll look terrible. The people who are reading your living documentation, they go, "What are they doing? What are they trying? What are they talking about?" So use them correctly, please, or carefully. And then also you can use stars instead of any of these. So as long as it reads naturally. So maybe if you have a then, so instead of doing but, I could have put a star instead of but. And so here I have the scenario of Friday is Friday, and you see the word and here. I've got, instead of I should have ice cream in my bowl. So of course it's Friday. I'm really excited, and so I'm gonna have ice cream in my bowl tonight. So okay. So enough about that. Let me go ahead and go back to the code, and I'll show you how that works. Just a second. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and uncomment this, and these two right here, and we'll see the steps for those. So all right, let's run this feature. Watch and pass. So as you can see, I should have ice cream on my bowl, and it does indeed pass. And then you can also see here that the I have a bowl for ice cream also passed. So again, these run as part of the steps. And then to let me see, Sophie. So I think if I understand right, what you're asking is how do what's the best mechanism to initialize these features? So you have a constructor, and in this case, definition class, you can inject it, you can, in this case, Spring is wiring in the is it Friday class here for me, so I can separate the logic of the actual application code from the test. They're not coupled. And then the let's see what else. Is this what you were wondering, Sophie? And then also, Cucumber will the Cucumber engine will look for the run Cucumber test class, and we can this will trigger the calling of our Cucumber test, which will then take care of calling our Cucumber step definitions for us. So if I were to take and run this using Maven, it will actually use this run Cucumber test class for us to get started. So, all right, what next? So another way we can have it scale is through what are called scenario outlines. So here, of course, you can imagine that if we have Friday, is it Friday, is it Friday, but you have just slight variations, it can get kind of boring and exhausting. So instead, what we have something called scenario outlines, which can make multiple scenarios much easier to read. And so as you can see here, we have sort of almost a variable in the step definition. Oh, so go back. I think, is that right? So you see here we have the word day right here, and then it maps to this column right here under the examples. And same thing with answer. We have this answer sort of placeholder, and it maps this answer. So each of these will be a scenario that will be executed by. So because each of these scenarios will be run, again, keep in mind that each of these lines in the table will be run, you'll have Cucumber execute each of these as a distinct scenario. So if you have a bunch of different scenarios that are almost identical, you need to ask yourself, do I really need all of these scenarios? Is there enough difference, or is it just kind of clogging up what I'm trying to illustrate? So what I'm trying to convey to the user. Important for these for the scenario outlines to be examples that are illustrative and representative of what you want to do, rather than exhaustive. So again, also it's very important to remember that if you every scenario, every line in this table, every scenario will be executed. And if it takes a long time to run a single scenario, it's going to take 20 times longer if you have 20 different scenario outline examples. So let me go ahead and show that. So I'm going to go ahead and uncomment here. So if we have, if we go ahead and execute feature, all the features right here, all the scenarios in the feature right here, you'll see that each of them are run. So here is the scenario. Today is red design. And then you have each of these are examples that have been executed that are in our scenario. So we have Friday, Sunday, and anything else. So that is scenario outlines. Yes, so hooks. Thank you, Sophie. So I intentionally didn't cover those in this presentation because I wanted to just be an introduction, but thank you for bringing that up. So you can have hooks in your scenarios and scenario outlines, and you can specify those through annotations. These annotations are, you can have both as an @ and then I haven't really taken a big deep dive into hooks myself, but they are available, and then you can specify the annotations in your step definitions class, and they can be executed under certain circumstances. And you can also have, like, say, typically hooks are, if you're curious, are used for setup and for tear down of the unit tests of the scenarios as they're run. They're typically more technical, whereas background is much more business focused. So what else? So now you're probably wondering, well, what about unit tests? So who thinks unit tests are important? Would they still be important? Yes, no? Are unit tests still important? Yes. Okay. Cool. If you're thinking yes, if you're saying yes, you're right. Unit tests are still important because you should continue to write unit tests to test things that should just work, but may not necessarily contribute business value, such as, well, like I talked about earlier, login screens. But other things that don't necessarily deliver direct business value. But you want to use unit tests, business cucumber tests, to make sure you're building what the customer wants, and to help the users and yourself figure out what to do in exceptionally and genuinely exceptional business conditions that the user might encounter. And so you can use, again, plain English language so that the user can work through these exceptional scenarios with you. So again, BDD tests are to make sure you're building the right thing. And unit tests, think of it more as you're building the thing right. So, of course, all managers want a report. So in Java, there is a great little tool called Cluecumber. It's a report that is a Maven plugin. I think they may have a Gradle plugin as well. And so it's called Cluecumber with an L, and it's on GitHub. Or if you just type in Cluecumber report plugin or Cluecumber on Google, you'll find it. And the great thing is that it requires minimal changes to your project. It generates an interactive, easy to navigate report, and it is also Apache licensed. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and fail a couple of unit tests here. So I'll say assert not equals, and then we can go ahead and run clean, and then test all these, and we'll watch it fail through these scenarios. And I'll run the Cluecumber report. Okay, it failed, good. And then give it just a second here. Okay, and so it'll actually tell me where I can find that Cluecumber report. So let's go there. Okay, so now you can see what percentage, how many failed, how many passed, and how many were skipped. And then you can drill down and see, okay, what failed here, and you can see which ones passed. So if we're to dive in, we can see Friday's Friday, and we can see what the exception was that was thrown, or whenever it didn't pass for each of those scenarios. So again, managers love reports. So this, if you're wanting a report, you can say, here you go, here's the report. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So next, I'd like to talk to you about something that's also really cool called mutation testing. So has anybody heard of mutation testing before? Anybody? So mutation testing is, okay, good. Sophie, cool, you're gonna love this. I think everybody's gonna like this. This is something that should be in the back pocket of every single developer. So there's a great Java tool library called PyTest, PITEST.org. Go look at it now if you want to, definitely. And so it in of itself is a Maven plugin that will take and mutate the bytecode. It'll change the bytecode of no worries, Ronaldo. So it'll change the bytecode of your Java code, and then it will rerun all of the unit tests that call that particular method where that bytecode exists that was changed, and then it'll see if any of the unit tests that are run fail. And so you can, if no tests fail when that mutation occurs, then that line of code is not tested thoroughly. So it's not tested. But if there are unit tests that do fail, then that line has been verifiably tested. So this particular plugin right here is a plugin for PyTest.org. And so I've actually helped a little bit with this. I migrated from Cucumber 4 to Cucumber 5. Now I do need to warn you, it does not yet work with Cucumber 6, though I'm going to see what I can do to help get it there pretty soon. It's a great little plugin, and the really nice thing is that it's just a drop-in plugin, and it requires no code changes other than adding it to your POM. The Apache licensed, and it's almost like a virtual, basically, to help you notice and realize, okay, gosh, we hadn't necessarily thought about that. We should explore that scenario. So a little bit of background about mutation testing. So again, full explanations are on pytest.org. That's the website. So there are conditionals boundary, which replaces less than with less than equals, or greater than with greater than equals. And then also there is an increment operator. So this will swap those. So you have plus plus or minus minus. It'll swap those out. So and then also let's see, we have math. So the math operators, math mutator will replace the opposite operator with the opposite operator. So of course, as you can imagine, plus gets changed to minus, minus gets changed to plus, and then divide gets changed with to multiply, multiply gets changed to divide, and then modulo gets changed to multiply. And then the math mutations also incorporate bitwise operators. Then negative conditionals overlap with conditionals boundary mutators. And then return values mutators, these are really cool. So the return values mutator will actually return true instead of false. It'll return 0 instead of an integer, or it will return 1 if it returns 0. And then not a number for float 0. And then if your method returns an object, it'll return a null. If it returns a non-null value, and it'll throw a runtime exception if the method returns null by default. And then also, last but not least, the void method call mutation will actually take and remove a method completely from execution, and it'll allow us to determine if that method is really needed, or if additional testing of the side effects that are produced by the call are actually required. So one important thing, though, about mutation testing is that all of your unit tests must pass. It's absolutely critical. So there's also another group of mutations. This is the default mutations. There's another one called I think there's about 30 or 40 mutations that are performed in total. There's another one called stronger and all. There are two, actually. That's right, two different mutation groups. And so the all mutation group performs every mutation, but also takes a lot longer to run. So these are a couple books that I used as part of my reading up on Cucumber. And again, this is about all that I looked into. And it, again, going back to you and your career, I didn't know all that much about Cucumber 6 months ago. I just dove in, and here I'm speaking to you about it today. And sometimes that's not really all it takes, is being super enthusiastic about what it does, and seeing the value, and being excited about the value that it can deliver. So the Cucumber for Java book takes a deep dive into the technical capabilities. So Sophie, this is where you'll find out about the hooks. And then the behavior-driven development with Cucumber talks a lot about the process of taking and developing the scenarios and things along those. That's where the 3 Amigos meetings was discussed. And then also here again is the GitHub account. Please, it's got an MIT license on it. Please go ahead and take look at it, borrow it, copy paste code, whatever you need to do to get started. Go to town. And then there's also cucumber.io. They have Cucumber School with free online courses for Java, for Ruby, and JavaScript, and a lot of documentation for Cucumber. And then also a lot of fun is the Cucumber podcast, which you should be able to find from Cucumber.io. It's a lot of fun. The folks who write the Cucumber implementation actually host these podcasts. It's really great, really awesome. And then John Ferguson Smart is somebody you should look up if you haven't yet. Look him up. Go look him up on LinkedIn. And then also he's got a book that's coming out that's in progress right now. He's working on it. It's in open access right now. It's so if you want to buy it and you want to say, hey, look, I would really appreciate some more explanations about it, about something. You can jump in and say, hey, look, can you clarify that? So it's a great opportunity for you to provide feedback to him. And then, oh goodness, what else? Again, start small if you're new in your career, but get into the habit of getting up in front of crowds and giving talks, sharing what you know, because that's the best way to grow. And if you really want to learn something, give a presentation on it. And also, again, I work for improving.com. And if you're interested in some of the courses that we offer, you can email me at jim.bethancourt@improving.com. Again, I'll type it here in the chat. And we'll see if we can email me, and we'll see if we can maybe get you a discount. We give a lot of coursework around Scrum, and we also do consulting. And it's just been a great place to work for. If you're looking if you're exploring new opportunities, let me know. And goodness, what else? I think that's about it. So, happy cucumber. So yeah, if you have any questions, stick around. I'd be happy to talk some more. Oh goodness. Whew. Okay. Yeah, I'll stick around for a few minutes if you have questions. Thank you too, Sophie. Yeah, and again, if you want to reach out to me over LinkedIn, I'd be happy to connect with you. Thanks so much, Amanda. Hello, hey Bob, you there? Cool, thanks. Thanks for attending my talk. Awesome. So I was gonna give this at the Houston Java user group. Gosh, I guess March, right before we went into lockdown, into quarantine. So, oh, that's right. Another version of this talk I gave recently. It's on YouTube. So there we go. Yeah. So here we go. Yeah. So this is the URL link for it if you're curious. It wasn't quite as interactive though. So, oh no, Bob, sorry, it's a 3. I'm so sorry. Yeah, the schedule is a little bit tricky to read. But this is recorded, so so you can you'll be able to watch this after it's all done. So yeah. Okay. Yeah, Bob, we can go ahead and definitely reconnect in the lobby though. Looks like there aren't any more questions. Thank you again, audience. It's been great having you. Thank you for being interactive. It made this presentation much more enjoyable for me. All right, y'all have a great weekend. Enjoy your ice cream.